Good evening. My name is Rodney Allen. I'm here to talk about OSHA, give you raise your level of awareness about OSHA, and also give you an update on the Hazard Communication Standard 2012. Before we start out, what I'd like to do is I want everybody to feel like this is their meeting, this is their seminar. You can ask questions, and if you got any concerns or issues or something you don't understand, then just stop me, and I'll give you a better explanation. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, sounds great.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, we're gonna have, what we're gonna do, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna have a good time, and we're gonna learn a few things in this hour of this seminar that we're putting on. I want to thank Andy Fox for producing this and providing the facilities that we have today, and I want to thank you all for coming. What I want to talk about, first thing I want to do is I want to kind of go around the room a little bit and find out what when somebody mentioned OSHA, what ideas come to your head? Don?
Yeah, I think the first idea that comes into my head is fear.
Okay.
I know the plant people.
Mm-hmm.
When OSHA came in to where we were working,
Mm-hmm.
Man, those plant people used to jump around and
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
That's the overwhelming thing I can remember is fear.
Oh, okay. What about you, Andy?
I think it's another bureaucracy, government
Okay.
bureaucracy.
Okay.
You know, and
Right.
not knowing how to handle the government
Right.
bureaucracy.
Right. Right. Well, the thing about OSHA, it is a regulatory organization, and but there's a reason for OSHA. There are a lot of people being severely injured and killed, and in the 40 years that OSHA's been around, the workplaces have become a lot more safer and healthful. So there is a reason for OSHA. The need has not gone, because even though things are pretty much running pretty smoothly now in the workplace, you still have, without rules and regulations, people have a tendency to become complacent. And that is the main reason why you still need rules and regulations. The public is pretty educated now, and OSHA has a brand name. When somebody says OSHA, I mean, you can say Pepsi or Tropicana or Frito-Lay. I mean, people have an idea what OSHA does. They have a concept of feeling. But you shouldn't be afraid of OSHA, because OSHA is there to help you. And the bad actors who are hurting and killing and maiming people are not going to be in business very long. What I want to do is I want to show you how OSHA can improve or increase your profit margin by being safe, having a good safety management program. Then what that's going to do is it's going to make you more respected in the community, in the area. It's also going to make people want to come and work for you, because happy employees, if they have high morale, then they're going to make happy customers. So I'm a subject matter expert when it comes to OSHA, but I have an MBA in business, so I understand the profit concept. You know, you're in business to make money, and the other things that come along with that, such as camaraderie, socializing, and things of that nature. Those things are important also. So, yes, Don.
When you're, let's say, going, usually OSHA, when I was back in my day, was a cost center, correct? Okay. Normally?
No, OSHA wasn't a cost center. OSHA's always been a profit center. It's just that there's the perception that the people who generally in the beginning were doing training or safety, it was somebody that was working on the production line. They said, well, Joe's a good, he's a good worker, and so let's make him the safety man. You know, Joe had no formal training, education, or experiences in safety. You can go, if you got a background in business. You can look at your financial ratios, things of that nature. You can go and do surveys, ask questions, focus groups, things of that nature. All that's business. You know, without the training, Joe wasn't in a position to demonstrate that that safety is a profit center and not a cost center or overhead. So, and we're moving into a period of time where we got, on my staff personally, all my staff that do the training have a master's degree or a PhD. So they're very educated and also have over 5 years experience in safety or industrial hygiene or environmental work, whatever. So you gotta have, so if you get an individual who's been educated, trained, and experienced, then you'll see really that person has a right to have a table or have a chair at the table with the rest of management. Did I answer your question?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So anybody else got a question about you, Andy?
Well, I think the thing that concerns me is, when does OSHA come in? Is it because there's a complaint, or does OSHA just do general inspections?
Well, OSHA can come in because an employee. Let me go back to tell you what OSHA's jurisdiction is. OSHA's jurisdiction is an employer-employee relationship, not a volunteer, not a 1099er, but an employee. And I can get into the 1099 stuff if I answer that. But OSHA, if an employee, a current employee, calls and makes a complaint, then OSHA has to act on that. And also they do what they call unannounced visits. Basically, when I was doing the OSHA work, we would look at the Dodge report. Now, don't ask me what the Dodge report is, because I can't remember right now the details. But we would use a Dodge report, and every 3 or 4 years or whatever, we would go back and check that place out or something like that, and see exactly if they were really trying to protect the workers. Yeah. Any other questions? What I want to talk about is Hazard Communication 2000. Back in March of 1912, OSHA promulgated a new standard. And usually when OSHA promulgates a new standard, 2 months later that standard becomes like a final rule. And they also gave a what they call a transition period from 1912 to 2012 to 2016 before the standard would become fully implemented. In other words, between 2012 and 2016, you still had to follow Hazardous Communication Standard 1994 and also be working on complying with Hazard Communication Standard 2012. All this started back in a town in Brazil called Rio de Janeiro back in 1992. Everything is really centered and hinged around global warming. Back in 1992, about 20 countries, including China and India, made an agreement that they would cut their carbon emissions, or they would build less coal-fired plants, because the majority of the carbon emissions are generated by coal-fired plants, and also gas and oil, but mainly coal. Coal is probably about 40% of the source of carbon dioxide that's trapping the heat into the atmosphere and causing ice caps, polar ice caps in Antarctica and the Arctic Circle to melt. If you don't believe that this is true, then I suggest you go and get the documentary called Chasing Ice and watch that documentary. And after you watch that documentary, you'll get conclusive evidence that there is global warming going on and that man-made activities are affecting the health and the livability and the survivability of this world. So, Andy, you got any questions? Anything you
Well, with OSHA, with the new law, starting with, you said it was June of 2016?
Yeah, June 1st, 2016 is when you're supposed to have all your employees trained on the chemicals that are coming into the workplace. You're supposed to have your up-to-date, all your safety data sheets. It used to be material safety data sheets, but we, in the United States, what it is the UN, that group that I was telling you that met in Rio de Janeiro, what they did was they dropped the M from safety data sheets and called it safety data sheets because there was confusion about what is a material. Is a material a compound? Is it a substance? Or is it a mixture? My training, my bachelor's degree was in chemistry, so I've been trained as a chemist. So I understand the technical aspects of this, of the confusion. Now, what happened was every country or every company had a different label or different sections on their material safety data sheets. So what the global harmonized system does, it standardizes all of them into 16 sections. And OSHA has jurisdiction over those 16 sections. Well, not all the 16 sections. They have jurisdiction over the first 12 sections, and then first 11 sections, and then sections 12, 13, 14, and 15 the jurisdiction goes to the Department of Transportation or the EPA. So all this is tied back into global warming. The world, they consider it their final attempt to save the Earth. And matter of fact, today is Wednesday, yesterday is Tuesday. Barack Obama was in Paris, France, for a convention of over 150 nations that are bent on ensuring that global warming is not going to destroy this Earth. And so it goes back. It's a lot involved in this global hazard harmonized system. It's a lot involved.
Do you see OSHA ever taking the responsibility for, educating and monitoring and enforcing laws in the area of global warming?
That would be more of the EPA job, the Environmental Protection Agency. OSHA is mainly concerned with workplace safety and health inside of a building. The EPA is concerned with what goes out of that building. Does it get into the land? Does it get into the water? Does it get into the air? They want to control that. But OSHA and the EPA, there was at one time talk of placing OSHA under the EPA, but nothing ever came as a result of that. So OSHA is a standalone agency in itself, and the EPA is a standalone. I can tell you the difference between the EPA and OSHA in terms of importance. OSHA has an annual budget of about $500 million, whereas the EPA has an annual budget of around $10 billion. So you can see where the emphasis is. It goes back to sustainability. When I got my MBA, I concentrated in sustainability. What that means is you got the triple P. You got people, planet, and profit. You take care of those three areas, then you take care of your world. And so in terms of the biggest problem, if you look in the news today, it talks about most Americans are concerned about the economy, jobs. Well, if you look on an international level or world level, the biggest concern is jobs, but also probably the thing that trumps jobs is the environment. Because without the planet, there are no people, and there is no profit. Without people, there is no profit. It takes people, so you got to take care of all three: your planet, your people, and your profit. And the thing about profit is, in the business schools nowadays, they don't teach the 5 Ps. They teach the the 4 P's, which is price, promotion, place, and
Profit?
profit. And then you can also say people. You know, but what they've done is the only thing you have for profit is a scorecard. It tells you what. Think of it like this: what gets measured gets done. If you can't measure it, if you don't know your numbers, then you don't know your business. So you have to think about it like that. So profit is still important. Some people associate, well, if the company's being profitable, then they're greed. American greed, for example. Greed gets us in trouble. It's created a number of different bubbles: housing bubble, dot-com bubble, whatever. But you still, profit is a legitimate concern because you need a scorecard, and that's the only way you can measure yourself. Are you meeting your targets? Are you above your targets? You're below your target? Why? And you know, you ask questions and break questions, and you solve these problems. Yeah. So yesterday was December 1st. So what that means is that's another milestone in Hazard Communication 2012. What that means is any importer, manufacturer, or company that ships hazardous chemicals to your job site, it has to be accompanied with a safety data sheet. If it's not a safety data sheet there, you don't accept it. Or, to be more reasonable, you get on the phone, you call that supplier and tell them you need a safety data sheet emailed to you or fax within a 2-hour period before you accept their, or you're going to have to return their chemicals to them. So everybody's supposed to be in compliance. Today is December 2nd. And the next drop dead date is June 1st, 2016. After June 1st, 2016, all your employees got to be trained, initial training. And that should have been done back in December 1st, 2013, but we're currently in 2015, so OSHA has given their employers enough time to transition, but the employees still need to be trained in the chemicals that they're being working with and being exposed to, and it needs to be properly labeled. There's a consistent labeling system based on that is universal that everybody should be using, and it's in the standard. You know, but the standard, like I said, if you want a sleeping pill, you can read the standard, or you can learn from a guy like me who enjoys this stuff. So it's up to you. Any questions? So you gotta see the whole thing behind OSHA is, the whole reason behind OSHA is that OSHA is trying to get everybody to plan. Think of you as a business, and you have to develop a business plan. You know, if you don't develop a business plan, your chances of being successful and profitable diminishes greatly. Well, OSHA just wants the companies to develop a comprehensive safety and health plan. Basically what it does is it puts information down on paper and it assures that you have thought about these things, the big things, so when the small things happen, they won't be such of a, cause such of a panic. And so, and then they also know that you've thought about these things and you plan. So you plan your emergency response, you plan if you're dealing with, you know, being an employer, whatever industry you're in, you should know your industry, and it's reasonable to expect that you know what's required. That's part of your job as an employer. You can't claim ignorance, you know, because you should know these things because you're in that business. You should be an expert in your own field, your own industry, your own business. And that's what OSHA is wanting to get everybody develop a written safety, comprehensive safety and health plan. Because if you don't plan, then you plan to fail. That is so true. Did any of you aware of this? Is this something new that you've heard? You aware of it?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Don?
No, I wasn't completely aware of it.
Yeah,
Spring freeze. Go ahead.
okay, yeah. But the thing is, like I say, OSHA is there. It's an organization that's really truly there to help employees and employers, because we know that the safety guy has a thankless job. He has a hard job. You know, people a lot of times don't. You know, they fear the safety guy. They don't. Go ahead.
What is there any statistic that says what the average fine is when OSHA goes in and does an inspection?
Not that I know of. Basically, what happens is the only thing I can say about that is that the fine is appropriate for the size or the sales receipts or the number of employees that the company has, and then also about how many employees or what employees are being exposed to a particular hazard. You look at the severity, you look at the frequency, and you look at a number of different things. The OSHA inspector, he goes in and he does his inspection, but generally it's the assistant secretary who decides what the penalties are going to be. He's usually not involved in calculating the dollar amounts.
Here's another question. On your hazardous materials, I know that when people say hazardous materials, they're generally talking about things like zinc and mercury and things like that, probably. But what about drugs? What about people that have to manufacture, you know?
Well, you got to understand, like, when you talk about drugs, you're talking about the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. That's their jurisdiction.
Oh,
You got to understand, OSHA is concerned with an employer-employee relationship.
right.
If you have just one employee, then you're under OSHA's jurisdiction. And then OSHA goes into a situation, and if they see something that the EPA may be concerned with, or the DOT may be concerned with, or the FDA is concerned with, they can make a referral to them. But just like a firefighter or a police officer who have been trained and have a heightened sense of awareness about safety can make a complaint, and it will be taken seriously because of the nature of the work that they do. Yeah, so you have to remember who has jurisdiction. It's kind of like the sheriff and the local police and the FBI. You know, is this a federal case, or is this a state case, or is this a local case? You know, it's about jurisdiction.
That's an interesting point. I've never heard that really brought out before, that, you know, there are so many not safety, but, you know, so many different jurisdictions kind of looking out for it.
Yeah, the thing is, and some of them conflict with each other. Like I said, the EPA is concerned about the water, the land, and the air. OSHA is concerned about the employees inside a construction zone or inside of a manufacturing facility. And sometimes they conflict. And, you know, cooler heads have to rule. You know, what are we trying to do? You know, we're trying to keep the workers' safety and his health intact. You know, so that and productive and uplift their morale, and we're trying to increase the profit margin for the company, because the company makes money. If the company doesn't make money, the company can't stay in business. So the safety person usually on the job has a responsibility to the employer, but at night he's got to go home and live with his conscience. So he has a responsibility to the employee. So he's like the person in the middle, where he's the liaison between the employee and the employer, and it's his job to tell the employer exactly what he or she should be doing, and also to counsel the employee. You know, the employee has responsibilities too. The employee has responsibilities to be safe, and that's why they say safety is everybody's business, from the CEO down to the janitor. Everybody's responsible for safety. And There are CEOs that have gone to jail and that have been fined because of their total disregard for safety. There are cases of that.
Now, when you're talking safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you're talking to employees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to bring up an incident that I saw. Okay. Where a guy was working a saw, and he kind of he didn't go through his hand. He just kind of sliced through
Right,
a little bit of it.
right.
But you know, that brings up like a workers' comp claim, right?
Right.
So, is safety tied to workers' comp in a way?
Well, yeah, it is, because some insurance companies have a loss prevention or loss control department, and they go out and they do inspections, safety inspections, industrial hygiene inspections, whatever, for the company because it affects their experience modification rating, and if they want to keep it low, then they'll be complying with, you know, making sure that their workers are in an environment that's free of recognized hazards. And the thing is, insurance companies, as you and I have talked before, they use what they call survival models, and so they got a lot of data, and you can start getting into big data, which is something you and I have talked about before. But not to get off the subject, we're talking about OSHA right now. Yeah. What else? Any other?
In an office situation, like an accounting office or a legal office, what safety things do I need to be concerned about for my employees?
Ergonomics. Their interaction on the computer. They could be working. They can be typing on the computer, and they can get what we call repetitive strain injuries, or carpal tunnel syndrome. Mm-hmm. The chair could be, the height of the chair could be too low, it could be too high. They can also, you have to be careful. You have a lot of times in an office setting, people want to use step ladders, and they want to change a bulb or put up a decoration or something, and they can stand on top of that ladder, and they can fall. So they could fall off the ladder, they could tear their ACL, twist their ankle, or even kill themselves, from that shorter distance. So basically, in an office setting, you're looking at ergonomics. You want to make sure the furniture is ergonomically correct. You want to make sure that there's also concerns about electromagnetic radiation, or there's there was a guy named, he was a CEO of a company called Beatrice, and he used to talk on the phone a lot. And they think that, and there's studies, but it's not conclusive, that these electromagnetic radiation actually burn your brain or cause tumors in your brain, things like that. So you have to look at, in an office setting, you look at mainly administrative, rotating people from one job to another job. Because if they just do a job day in and day out, then they're gonna cause injuries to themselves. But the thing I want to talk about is OSHA is they generally come into a workplace. They call that the opening conference, and they show up. They sit down with management, and if there's a union, there's a shop steward that sits in with them, and then they all walk. The management and the shop steward and all that give OSHA an overview of what they do at the plant, what their operations are, and what their concerns are and the issues. Then they'll walk around the plant looking at different things. OSHA inspector talk to some employees, get a sense of what their knowledge level is, what their concerns are, what their issues. and just observe. He could come in there with a video cam and take pictures. He could do a number of different things. And then at the end of the walk around, they go and sit down and have what they call a closing conference. This is generally a safety person that would do this. Generally, a industrial hygienist would spend 8 hours or more into a plant, where a safety inspector would probably spend no more than 2 to 4 hours in a plant and close the case. And then the next step will be like an informal conference. So there's a process and a procedure that they go through when they inspect facilities.
But what, okay, if one of them's in there for 4 hours, which is the safety inspector,
Yes.
and the industrial hygienist is there for 8 hours,
Well, the difference is a safety inspector can do probably over 200 inspections a year. A good industrial hygienist might be averaging anywhere between 40 and 50 inspections a year.
what are they, what different things do they look for?
Well, an industrial hygienist is looking at noise, looking at respiratory protection. They're looking at basically they have to do an 8-hour sampling of what the air that the worker's breathing. They could do a personal sampling, or they could do an area sample, both. They basically design a program that when they go into a place and they look at it and they figure out what may be a problem area, and they generate. And one thing employers don't understand also, when an OSHA inspector comes into a plant and they write a report and they find this and that, whatever, they could use that report they could use that report as a means of saying, well, we've had an inspection by a competent, qualified, certified, well, qualified, you don't have to be certified, qualified individual, and and they can show that as a record. And I advise them to keep the record, because in 3 to 5 years, an OSHA inspector may come back and see exactly how they're doing. Are they doing better? Are they doing worse? Or are they about the same? Whatever.
So who determines what benchmarks are for OSHA?
Management, it used to be something called the Dodge Report. I can't remember the details of the Dodge Report, but they basically, right now, OSHA has an emphasis on amputations, and they also have an emphasis on fall protection and electricity. So those are really the big areas. When construction safety, also the big area is loss prevention, working for insurance companies, because insurance companies want to make sure that that the employer is taking care of his people or her people, whatever. So, any other questions?
In an office, what safety data sheets do I have to have? Do I have to have it for the correction fluid? What types of things, since a lot of businesses are office businesses, what types of data sheet do I need?
Well, on any chemical, every chemical should have a material safety data sheet. Even if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you should be able to get a material safety data sheet from them. You just have to ask. Majority of people don't. But you got to also look at the hazard. What is the hazard? What is the severity? If this person's using correction fluid, I don't know. I don't even know how many people still use typewriters.
Right.
But the hazard is minimum, because they're not using it in an 8-hour day, or in an 8-hour day you may average about 6.5 hours of work, because you got 30 minutes for lunch and 2 15-minute breaks. It's an hour right there. And it takes time to get ramped up when you get ready to work. Maybe 5.5 hours, 6 hours of actual work that you actually do on the job. So your exposure could be minimum, And but basically, you're looking for stuff like acetone. Acetone is in nail polish remover. You're looking for companies that have 5-gallon buckets of this stuff, like at a boat manufacturing facility. They got fiberglass. They're using table saws to cut the fiberglass and putting it all in the air, and people are breathing it. And they got to have a respiratory protection program. You know, they got to fit test people. They got to make sure people don't have beards. They shave daily before they go into that operation. Or they're in a spray painting booth, and they're doing spray painting. You got to make sure they're not breathing any volatile organic compounds. We call them VOCs, things of that nature. So it depends on the business. When I was with Maryland OSHA, I inspected all kind of business, from funeral homes, nail polish parlors, salons, light manufacturing facilities, construction sites. So it's it's the nature of the business. You got to understand the business, understand the processes and the products that they're producing, and understand how the people are interacting with it. Basically, when you look at safety, all you got to do is look at it's an interaction between a man or a person and a machine or machinery. Anytime you have an interaction between a man and a machine, there's a possibility of an injury or death. And I can go up to any piece of equipment I've never seen before. You know, I can look at it and I can tell exactly what the problem areas are, because I've been trained to look at a situation like that.
Okay.
How long does it take you to become a trained expert like yourself?
Well, Maryland OSHA trained me for 18 months, a year and a half. So I went through a year and a half training program. They spent over $100,000 training me.
So it's a considerable amount.
Yes, it is. It is. And then the Navy spent over $100,000 training me in nuclear engineering. 6 months I had to learn 4.5 years of nuclear engineering.
Wow.
So it's been a considerable investment. So I want to give it back to the public.
Into this knowledge base, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So OSHA really, like I say, the fact that OSHA exists, you got to have a before situation. If the story goes this way, you have a before situation and an after situation. Before OSHA, you had child labor, you had kids getting killed on jobs, getting maimed, injured. You know, after OSHA, no kids as adults. You know, you had a lot of people dying in the coal mines. You still have people getting black lungs. You know, I was reading an article in today's paper, and it was talking about coal and black lungs. You know, but in West Virginia and Kentucky, you know, they live off of coal. And so what we're moving into is a digital age or information age, more of a service economy. And manufacturing is still alive and prospering, and things are improving. But you have to look at, like I said, the emphasis in the trend is trending, everything is trending toward ergonomics, construction safety, where you have fall protection, and electrical and mechanical contractors doing work. Chemical, yeah, chemical.
That's your hazardous materials.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember when I was working with this one company, and I had to put on a moon suit. I had to have air tanks, oxygen pumped inside the suit, and went inside this big vat container, and the chemical was so deadly that if one drop got on your skin, you know, it could cause severe injury. And so I went in there, and then you come out and you get in the cold zone, the hot zone, and all that. It gets into a whole new area of emergency response and disaster response. But and then you get washed down. And then you had an employer wanted you to use that suit a second time. You know, you can't do that. And I said, you can't do it. You got to throw it away. You got to dispose of it properly, because you don't know whether or not it's been compromised. And you go into a situation where you got this type of chemical. I mean, the chemical is so bad the company won't even allow its own people to service it. You know, it gets a contractor to come in and do the work. So.
What's that, hydrochloric acid or something like that?
I can't remember what the chemical was, but it was a bad actor, real bad actor. Yeah. So, my whole thing with occupational safety and health is that, first of all, it's a profit center. And second of all, the people who are in the field should be trained, educated, and have experience. And third, whenever there's a management meeting, the safety person should have a seat at the table. And the fourth thing is, what's happening in the safety field is now what we call prevention through design. In other words, if that person walks and falls into a hole and breaks his leg, then that should have been thought about during the design stage. In other words, we're not going to leave a hole open and exposed. We're going to make sure there are jersey barricades or yellow tape or orange tape or whatever around that hole so that nobody can fall into it and hurt themselves. So the understanding is you got what you call the substitution. You got different levels of when you look at safety that you need to look at. But when they first design the plan or they think about the job, the safety person should be right there with the professional engineers, the civil engineers, and estimators and all the other people, and putting their input in about how to make the job safer. If they have a certain chemical they're going to use, and they find out that chemical is really poisonous or dangerous or hazardous, then they should be able to recommend a substitute. For example, in the dry cleaning industry, they used to use a lot of perchloroethylene, and there's another chemical they can use. It's been a while since trichol something, but it's less effective, and that's why people want to use, like they used to use benzene. Benzene is a cancer-causing agent, and they don't use it anymore. And we used to use benzene in the laboratory when I was going to school, but that was another one of the reasons why I didn't like working in the lab, because you're working all these different chemicals and you didn't know what they were doing to you. So.
What? Give me like a 5-point summary of what you think, as an OSHA expert, that the new Hazardous Materials Act, what effects will it have? 5 points.
Well, the thing is, the globally harmonized system at this point, as of today, December 2nd, 2015, is on its 5th revision. OSHA decided to take it at the 3rd revision, because at some point you got to cut it off. And then other countries have different timetables when they're going to implement it. And my summary is that we're dealing in a global world, a global economy, and the workers and the people could be speaking different languages. Could be speaking French, English, Spanish, whatever. So they have what they call pictograms, which is universal pictures. And you look at that picture, and any worker that look in that picture in any country can tell what the dangers of that chemical are. And it's also standardized with 16 different sections. So they want to know about what first aid, if I get a chemical in my eye, what I need to do, go under one of those eye showers and flush my eye for 15 minutes or more, and then go to a doctor or a clinic or a hospital right away, I get treatment. Or if I swallow something that's poisonous, somebody put a chemical in a Coke bottle now, and it looked like Coke, and I drink it, you know, then, I mean, because it wasn't labeled, I thought it was a Coke, you know, or they put their sandwiches or a lunch inside of a refrigerator that has chemicals, and those chemicals leach into the sandwich, and they're poisonous, and it kills them. Or if a guy's sitting at a table, lunch table, you got a microwave there, and he puts his elbow on the microwave, and he gets electrocuted because there's a short in the microwave. I mean, there's so many different ways you can kill yourself, and you have to, as a safety person, you have to think about how many ways or what type of ways can this hurt me, you know. And with my training in the Navy says, the more you know about something, the better able you are to control it. And so it's about being aware, being knowledgeable, and being proactive, getting in front of things rather than being reactive. Because usually when you're reactive, it's too late. OSHA generally shows up on the job when somebody's gotten hurt or got killed. That's too late. But the safety person is right there every day, daily, seeing what the operations are, what's going on, how fast the pace is, the people are working at, or how slow the pace is. The faster things get, then the more chances of things getting out of kilter, going sideways.
Then a major corporation would benefit from having, let's say, a safety consultant like yourself at the front of any process.
Right.
That they are beginning to.
Right.
Yeah.
I had one case when I was a safety supervisor on a water tunnel job in Queens, New York. We had a situation where they wanted to build a box. They wanted to build it out of wood, and I told them that's not going to work, because in probably about 30 days that box would be totally destroyed by these big earth-moving pieces of equipment. And I said, you need to build that out of metal. So they put steel. They made it out of steel. Now, that right there saved them a lot of time, effort, and money. Because if they destroyed that box, they're going to have to rebuild it, remake it, and all that kind of stuff. And they're also going to have to stop production, because material had to go into that box first before it goes off out of the job site. So that's going to stop production or slow down production or whatever. Yeah, so.
Tim?
Andy?
Andy?
You know, the thing that kind of occurs to me as we're looking at this, that every business should have a safety inspector on the staff.
Yeah. Well, you know, generally, you know, when you start up as a startup, the biggest concern is cash flow.
Right.
And safety usually is something down the road, you know, when I get to a point where I can afford a safety, or I can justify a safety person. Well, you know, safety is this is the tagline I'll leave you with. Safety and education first, no headaches later. We've covered a lot of material in a short amount of time, an hour time, so I thank everybody for coming tonight, and I hope you've learned something, you're more educated about OSHA and what OSHA is about. OSHA is not the boogeyman that some people think it is. OSHA was created out of a need. There was a need, because people were getting maimed, killed, and hurt, and even children was getting maimed, killed, and hurt. So once you understand what OSHA is trying to do, they basically are trying to get everybody to do a written safety and health comprehensive safety plan about their operation, their specific operations in their specific workplace, so that they'll be aware of, be proactive rather than reactive. Because when you're reactive, it's going to cost you more money than if you're proactive. And also when you're proactive, you're going to be more profitable. And that's the name of the game. You know, you want to be successful and profitable. And you want to be able to have a sustainable business model that takes you 100, 200 years into the future.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
But
Thank
thank
you.
you.